And that afternoon, I get a call from someone called Jack Sylvester, who was the lead podcast producer for Steven Bartlett. And they were running the Diary of a CEO, which at the time was just under 1 million subscribers. And Jack sent me a text. He said, "Hey, Will, we've got this massive opportunity. We're launching a behind-the-scenes channel for Steven Bartlett. We want someone who can travel with him, who can be on the road, go to all the different countries, film every single day, edit and produce what they wanted at the time to be a vlog." And I was sat there in the university library like, oh my God.
What happens before posting any episodes?
We really do film 7 days a week, always on content with Steve. So we are traveling the world with Steve. The first 2 years when it was just me, I think we did 54 flights in 54 weeks. And we are all over the place. We're always filming. You're editing on the move. You really are documenting every single moment. We have this thesis we love, which is if you could have watched how Apple, Meta, Tesla were all built in real time from day one, would you? We exist so that the next generation of entrepreneurs understand what it takes, what they need, and what it looks like when they get there.
If a content creator is thinking a lot about his mission and everything, what should be his priority today? And nowadays, how can you create community, developing your content? And you've got all of those things that you need to kind of learn from scratch. Like there's the marketing, there's the value to your mission, there's the storytelling, there's the editing. Is there any that I should focus on the most?
I think one of the most important things I've learned over the last 3 years of working with Steve and with Flight Store.
Seres Mortales es un podcast que da voz a la mayoría de la población. Gente corriente contando su día a día. Reflexiones de cómo la gente logra sus objetivos. Seres Mortales es tensión, responsabilidades, concentración y felicidad. La realidad que no nos enseñan. Seres Mortales es gente contando su historia.
Will, your life has changed massively over the last 3 years. Why?
That's a great question. It's changed because I took a really, really big risk and I made a really stupid decision.
Stupid decision.
Stupid decision.
Which was?
I dropped out of university to take a job offer without telling my parents. Now, stupid is subjective. So I'd been at Edinburgh University for 3 years studying cinematography and film. And it was a Wednesday afternoon and I was in the university library and I get a text from my boss at the time. And he says, "Will, I'm going to have to fire you." And it was 9 a.m. and I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And he says, "But it's for a really, really good reason. I've just been sent a job offer and I can't take it, but I think you should."
Well.
And I said, wow. And that afternoon, I get a call from someone called Jack Sylvester, who was the lead podcast producer for Steven Bartlett. And they were running the Diary of a CEO, which at the time was just under 1 million subscribers. And Jack sent me a text. He said, "Hey, Will, we've got this massive opportunity. We're launching a behind-the-scenes channel for Steven Bartlett. We want someone who can travel with him, who can be on the road, go to all the different countries, film every single day, edit and produce what they wanted at the time to be a vlog." And I was sat there in the university library like, oh my God, this is crazy. I'd spent the last 3 years at university wondering like, what are we all doing? We're absolutely doomed. And I think that message was a product of 3 years of just trying to find opportunities, trying to put my work out there. But to bring it back to your initial question, at that point, my life changed because I took the decision to call Jack, to say yes to the job offer, to drop out of university, and then importantly, to tell my parents at the end, to which my Spanish mother responded, "Pero tú estás loco."
My mum would have said that as well.
It's words to that effect. I'll keep the rest of it out. But, she's right. And I think she does have a point. Are you crazy? And I think my life changed when I said I was crazy enough to take a massive risk.
It's interesting how people that we love the most, right? They give us advice. And sometimes because it's what they have experienced and what they have lived, and they truly think that what they're advising you is the right thing for you to do, right? Whereas we live in a world now where if a big opportunity comes through, you just need to take the risk and go for it.
Absolutely. And I think people around you do it from a place of love.
Of course.
And I've been very lucky to have grown up supported from a family. I actually come from a family of extremely smart academic people, and then at the bottom of that list you have myself, who had a camera and some form of ambition. So I know my parents are doing it from a place of love, and they do it from a place of, well, you should follow this route and you should be academic and you should go down the traditional way and you should keep your paths open. But I've always just had that feeling that that wasn't meant for me.
How did that transition go? From estás loco to accepting it and it's happening and supporting you, of course.
It went by very quickly. So I got the text on a Wednesday. On that Wednesday afternoon, I had a call with Jack. On Friday afternoon, I woke up from a nap and I had another text from Jack saying, hey, can you call me? And at this point, I had thought there was no chance I was going to take the job because I was actually in Edinburgh. So 400 miles away from London. They wanted someone who could live very close to Steve. So I thought there was just absolutely no chance. And I woke up from the nap and I gave Jack a call and he said, hey, Will, I've had a chat with Steve. We've looked at your portfolio. We've looked at your work. We'd love to give you the job. Wow. And I was like, what? I couldn't really believe it. I mean, I was half asleep at the time, but that was a Friday. And then from Friday to Friday, I dropped out of university and accepted the offer. And then the next Friday I was down in London.
Hectic.
Moving all my stuff in and taking the job. And it was honestly that quick. And I think I reflect on this and I say, it was very quick for me, but I think for them it was very appealing. And one of the things I've learned looking back at this is that for employers especially, someone who can take the risk is actually quite appealing to them because they're willing to move fast and they're willing to start. And I think that is 90% of the reason as to why I got the job is because I was willing to say, hey, you need someone next week, I can be there. I will do this for you. Let's get started. And I think for someone who has no time, someone who wants to start something, sometimes the biggest risk takers can provide the most opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. What I see when I see like the opportunity that you had, I see it as a consequence that you, as a consequence of some actions that you took even before that time, when you started like creating content and in getting into that world, like it gets you at a point where you're at uni and you're like developed and grown and you've got your portfolio, you've got everything, But there was a day before that, like years ago, where you started creating content because you felt like you wanted to. Where did that spark come from?
It started in May 2016.
Very precise.
Very precise.
Good.
And I remember it very specifically because I was in a design technology class, design technology in year 8. And I was sat at the back of the class and I'm not really sure what everyone else was doing, but I was on my phone in the middle of class, editing some photos that I'd just taken. Photos at the zoo that I'd taken on the weekend of a gorilla that I was making black and white. And I was trying to understand, maybe if I can change the grain here and make it slightly darker, it won't be as noisy, or maybe I can keep it color and shift the tones on it. That's where my focus was. I don't know what everyone else was doing. And then suddenly I hear from the front of the room, Will, why are you on your phone? And I kind of shut up and sat back and pretended everything was okay. And it was a teacher called Mr. Williams who confiscated my phone off me. And at the end of the class, walked me to the front of the classroom. And I kind of stood there ready for like a detention of some sort. I stood there at the very front of the classroom and I looked at him. I looked up and then I looked back at my phone that was in his hand, waiting to see what he'd say. And he passed my phone back to me. And on the front was a photograph that I'd taken. And he said, Will, who took this photograph? And I was kind of like, oh my God, what do you mean? I said, well, it was me, sir. I took it on the weekend. And there was this weird moment of silence before he said, fantastic. Okay, well, I'm going to set you 5 photography challenges. You're going to go away this next week. You're going to execute them. You're going to bring them back to me and we'll have a look at what worked and what didn't. And I was like, what do you mean? Where's my detention? Where's my phone call home? Where's all the telling off? And I left that classroom not only without a detention, but I left with a seed of love for photography that has blossomed into what I call now my career, my passion, and hopefully my future as well. And I think what Mr. Williams gave me at the start there was a chance to gain evidence, a chance to like go out and learn and do ridiculous photography challenges and experience what it is to learn. And I'm really grateful for that. But for me, that's where it started, because since then it's just snowballed.
The power of a conversation, huh?
Amen, amen.
And the power of a teacher as well.
I mean, you're a teacher yourself.
Yeah, but like being able to, when you're supposed to give a attention or telling off or whatever, to see the like skill there and support you there, that's great.
He was an immense teacher, a truly immense teacher. And it's very strange to be able to look back in your life and say, wow, that specific moment in my life changed something in me. But I can see it clear as day. That was when it all started. I mean, before then, I'd been messing about with my dad's camera that I'd stolen off him and doing small things. But I think the value of that moment is twofold. It's in having the teacher who believed in you push you forward. And then it's actually the act of gaining evidence and doing experiments with photography. Because the thing that's taught me the most is messing around with the camera. I used to go to the park with my friends, put petrol on a skateboard, light it on fire, and try and take a photo of them doing some kind of trick. I used to do mudslides in the park with a flash and see if we could capture them. I'd go to the bakery at 5 a.m. and knock on the door to see if they'd let me in and photograph. I'd turn up to weddings uninvited with a camera and just see if the strangers would let me take some extra photographs. So yeah, Mr. Williams pushed me in that direction. But what developed from that was just this desire to try and to keep failing and to do ridiculous experiments with photography. And that's where all the learnings happened. So.
And how did you develop into like this skill? You said you were uninvited to weddings. You were showing up to see if they could allow you to take photos of them. Mm-hmm. How did that go?
I mean, it's a mixed bag. So for me, it started at 16 with photography. So I'd started taking photographs of my friends. I launched like a photography business and developed through weddings to corporate events to portraiture to weddings. And at the wedding stage, you realize it becomes very difficult to get a 50-year-old bride and groom to trust a 16-year-old who doesn't have any facial hair to document the most important day of their lives. So one of the ways I tried to get around this was just by gaining as much experience as possible. The first was shadowing other photographers, trying to see photographers in the area. Could I show up to their weddings? Could I just shoot for them and see if I could just observe how they do it? The second was just showing up to weddings to see wedding fairs and actual wedding events to say like, hey, I've got a camera. I'll take 1,000 photos for you and I'll send you them for free. And it only worked once, but it cultivated this attitude of you can just go and get the evidence to do these things. You can show up to the wedding and be asked by the groom, hey, when's the photographer here? And him look at you and you say, hey, it's me. And you just have to kind of figure it out. I think that's a big lesson that I taught myself in those early days is like, you just have to figure it out. And I carry that with me every single day since. Yeah.
All of that builds you into the person that you were when you received that call, right?
Yeah.
How did your life look at the moment, at that time, when you received this opportunity? You were at uni, but what else was going on in your life? Because as you said, you were like 21, you drop uni, but you drop the place you're living in as well. Like you have to move into London. You may have some friends close by that you live apart. How does that feel?
I was frustrated. Because I had been trying for so long to get an opportunity and it wasn't working. I was at University of Edinburgh and I'd absolutely loved it. I'd spent the first year doing everything a university student shouldn't do and do. And I loved it. I've met great people. I love the city of Edinburgh. But I've always had this feeling of there must be more. This can't be it. Like this university degree can't be the successful career and future that we prosper from as a creative. Like, surely this isn't it. And I'd look around and I'd be like, oh my God, we're all doomed. So from that has stemmed this maybe insecurity or desire to just push and maybe try and find new opportunities. So I spent all of my university degree avoiding my degree. And I would spend all my time investing into my freelance production company at this time. So I would work in London during the week, freelance, and then I'd travel back up to Edinburgh. I started a gardening business just to reinvest any money I would have into the photography business. In second year, I tried to go to Gymshark. I made it through to the last stages and it didn't go through. I then tried to go to AYBL, which is a fitness company, and it didn't go through. I was then going to go to Malawi and shoot a documentary. And I was just working on that. And then this opportunity came from Steve. And I was like, oh my God, like it felt serendipitous, but it also came completely out of the blue. So
yeah, but you kept moving. You were not at home studying for your degree, you know what I mean? You were like looking for things to happen.
I think that's a really good observation because it's something I see a lot of people at that stage in their career get wrong. If you're in your 20s, you can often ask yourself why or who for or when should I start? But really the question to ask yourself is what's next? What can I do next? What's the next opportunity? It doesn't have to be perfect. I think there's so much value in momentum and just execution. Doing the next thing, taking the ridiculous gig that you need to take just to see if it leads to something, trying and reaching out to a speaking engagement to see if it happens, drawing a picture of your friend and giving it to them on their wedding, just because it's a sense of momentum. And I've always found that those small things, those hundreds of ridiculous photo shoots that I must have done, those hundreds of gigs that I just did for the sake of experience, I think compound up to those big moments.
However, some people are scared to start because it may be cringe at the beginning, right? What would you say to that content creator who is like hesitating on starting because of it may look cringe or it's not what their friends do, but he would love to get started?
How badly do you want it to happen? Because it is cringe. It is so cringe. It's so true. Like, I don't think there's any person who does anything exceptional that sits there sticking to normal orders. I believe that to do something extraordinary, you have to stand out. And I think that's cringe is the price of entry. Embarrassment is the price of entry is a quote I always hear that I love. And I really felt that. I felt cringe. I was cringe at school. I would spend my break times pretending to go to meetings to try and edit some photographs. I was in lessons with my 16-year-old friends with a camera shooting photographs for the head teacher. Like, I was definitely the black sheep. But I think I've never known anything else. So I felt cringe, but I've just kind of accepted that I guess that is just what you're going to do. And it's always worked for me.
And it does feel good once you can now reflect on the beginnings and how you evolved into the person you're now today.
And you must have felt this. I mean, you started a podcast. You must have had so many people be like, oh my God, like, look at this idiot with his podcast microphone. But I think that is the cost. I think that's the cost. I think cringe is success in hindsight. So cringe at the moment is really, really difficult, but in hindsight, it's success.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing that you mentioned is that like when you get moving, looking for things to happen, right? Like many people believe that the opportunity is going to come to you, and you ask yourself what's next. Like you have to ask yourself what's next. No, I also believe that my purpose in life was being a teacher, and just when I got the job that I always dream about, that is teaching in Spain, teaching English, and being back home after living in the UK and all of that. It's then when I find out that it's got to be something else. Like at the age of 26, it cannot just be that, you know, it's got to be something else. And it's when I started the podcast. So you never know. Everything you leave and everything that you experience was going to bring you on the next chapter of your life.
Interesting. Did you kind of get the sense that once you got that job in teaching, you were like, well, what else?
Yeah. I mean, it was what I've always wanted. Like I knew that when I was working here in the UK, I always had as an objective to come back to Spain and work in Spain, like teaching English and being comfortable, like being able to work where I would like to. And once I got there, I think it was like a matter of like 3 months. I was like, all right, this is cool. I enjoy this. Like it's fun. It's what I want. But there's got to be something else. Like I cannot just stay like this for the rest of my life. Like I think at some point I'm gonna want to evolve into something else. And that's when I started to think. I got inspired a lot by all the people that I met through the way abroad, and that's why I started the podcast. But it came, yeah.
I think that's the whole point, though, isn't it? That there's this really interesting theory called gold medal depression, which speaks to Olympians who receive gold medals, and then they often find themselves after the fact feeling depressed and very low. And it rings true for someone like yourself and also myself who is striving towards something that often when you reach the goal, you realize that it was never about the goal itself. And maybe it was actually the process of becoming a teacher, the learning about teaching students and the psychology of how you drive someone towards ambition that gave you purpose. And now you're seeking that through a new medium like podcasting. So I've always struggled with this of we're so goal orientated as humans, but it's very easy to forget that the process is the podium, you know, and that's exactly where you need to be. Yeah. And for me, as long as I'm completely out my depth and as long as I'm striving towards something that I have no idea whether I can do, then actually I'm exactly where I need to be.
That is the place where you want to be.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't think there is a goal to the work I do. It's never about like when I become X, I used to be very metric orientated. So I'd say when we hit 1 million subscribers or when I achieve X, Y, Z. But now really it's like, as long as you have that feeling of being out your depth, being slightly terrified, then things will be okay.
Yeah.
And I don't say terrified in like a paralyzed way. I say like that feeling of like, I'm not really sure if I can do this, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I've given these a lot of thoughts, and I think that is like success is just basically being able, like realizing that you're able to pursue something outside your skills where you can improve a lot, but there is not like a final, like an end goal, you know, like realizing that you are actually growing, that you have something to fight for or something to work for. It's not the outcome of that work. It's like realizing that you actually find that in you, you know.
Interesting. So what does success look like for you?
That exactly.
That exact point.
The fact of realizing that you have something to look forward to and develop yourself to, but without an end goal. It's like that place where you want to be, talking to people that you say like, what is going on? How comes I'm talking to this person? Being in rooms like you're not the cleverest guy in the room and all of that. That is what's gonna bring you your best version of yourself. So that's the thing.
Really resonates with me. Really, incompletable, unsurmountable goal is definitely the goal. I think. Yeah. I'm still figuring out what that looks like for me.
Yeah.
So it changes.
Yeah. So what comes next? You get that call. You move to London, and now you become the head of behind the diary, and you start documenting Steve's life like 24/7.
It was as it sounds. I remember the first day at work, I came into the office that we have on Shoreditch High Street at the time. And there was about 10 people in the team at that stage in the company. And I came in, I met Jack, we were setting up my laptop and Steve came in and we went straight into a meeting room and we sat down and we said, okay, what is this channel going to be? And who is this channel for? And our thesis sort of started as a behind the scenes channel of Steven's life as an entrepreneur. So the diary of a CEO, his speaking engagements, his international travel, and his entrepreneurship. It was very, very loose. And from that day, I was straight into on the road filming. There wasn't really a brief for what we wanted to create. We just said, we think there's value in showing people behind the scenes on his life. And at the time, our thesis was very selfish. And I'll come back to that, but it was very much focused around Steve. The first year was honestly just running around, filming, trying to edit, trying to understand what this is. I remember we spent the first 3 months filming, then we kind of came to the first edit. We showed it and we were like, okay, I guess this is it. And then we said, okay, we'll do these weekly. We'll start to push these out. And it was really just learning as I went. We look back at the first episode now and we're like, oh my God, what is this? But I think that's a really good sign.
It is, yeah.
That we developed and we've grown some taste. And what started out as a very selfish thesis of showing behind the scenes of Steve's life has now become very selfless and saying, how can we inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs by showing them actually how someone does it in real time? We have this thesis that we love, which is if you could have watched how Apple, Meta, Tesla were all built in real time from day one, would you?
Of course.
Exactly. And we follow the same thesis where we really want to show people, not tell them how entrepreneurs do this through Steve. And it's been one of the most rewarding journeys I've ever had the privilege to be on because I've learned so much. I've developed so much as a person, as an editor, as a videographer, as a team member, as a leader as well. And it just feels wild to me that it's only been 3 years because it has warped space and time. It's
been like 2 degrees now.
Honestly, it feels like simultaneously like it's been 6 months, and then it's also been like, it's probably about 3 years. I can't explain it, but I'm very privileged to have experienced everything over the last 3 years.
It's really interesting, I think, how nowadays behind the scenes in general, globally matters so much, right? Like, I think we're at the point where, and you guys were pioneers on this, because we're at the point where people fall in love more with the process and with the struggle and with the fails and with the wins rather than with the outcome of that process, right? And that's interesting because I think it's like a tweak in how to approach content. It's crazy how a behind the scenes channel or account can become the main thing. And at the moment, like many big companies, that's what they're going for, like showing the behind the scenes. You guys were pioneers on this, but this is what's happening now for all the big fish in the world.
And I think it's for two reasons. Two reasons perhaps that have led to BTS content being so popular. The first is I think this macro shift towards AI content. So as AI content starts to become really, really good and really, really easy to create, it means that everything starts to look really polished. Everything starts to look like the outcome. And no one is really able to show the process. So I think as people drift away from human with AI content, they're starting to crave someone failing, someone just going through it, someone sitting with them and saying, I actually have this problem and I'm trying to figure it out. And they really want to connect with the human. I think the first thing that pushes BTS content is this trend towards AI content, because everyone wants the real side now. They don't want the outcome. The second thing, I think, is that the internet is really saturated with people telling you what and how to do it, not people showing you how they do it. So it's become really easy to sit in a podcast chair and say, this is how I built my sales funnel to $10 million, or this is exactly how I trained to get this outcome. But really, it's very difficult for people to show you real time. And as humans, we really learn through observation, not through listening. We observe patterns and we observe behaviors and trends, and we take those on board. And as a result, I think that's why BTS content is just flying, because it's not many people who can show you how they implement their routines in the day-to-day, but there's probably millions of people who can tell you what they do.
At that point, I think it's massive, yeah. It's like you said, like if you could have watched Apple or Tesla growing and building since day one, what you do? Of course, like there's no one would say no to that.
Yeah.
So your life changes so quickly, right? And you certainly have some expectations that you need to adapt to, because you're following Steve everywhere, 24/7. You're head of the channel. How do you adapt to this? Like in a situation which is at the beginning unknown to you.
Yeah, that really rings true, because you're 21, you get dropped into a company after dropping out of university. You're suddenly surrounded by probably the best editors in podcasting in the world, the best trailer editors in podcasting, potentially the future best podcaster in the world, some of the most advanced commercial teams and experimentation teams in the world. And you're sat there with half a university degree, a camera, and some brief about launching a YouTube channel. And you really do ask yourself, like, this must be a mistake. This must be some huge fluke. This must be that they got someone else and it's not actually me who's meant to be here. And I spent probably the first 6 months of that job really struggling with imposter syndrome until I decided that it was actually the exact sensation I needed to have in order to progress in my career. I think so many people get imposter syndrome wrong because they see it as a sign that they're in the wrong room, not the right room. And I see this in all of these successful entrepreneurs I've had the chance to meet, and also working with Steve, that everyone who is doing something exceptional has that feeling. They probably have that sense of, I'm not entirely sure if I can do this. I'm probably the most or least experienced person in this room. But that is the breeding ground for great results. And one of the benefits I think I had at that age, where there was high expectations and I had low experience, was that I was really naive. And I think naivety forces creativity, because if I knew the answers, I wouldn't have innovated. If we knew what a behind-the-scenes channel was going to be, we wouldn't have had to think from the first principles and reason up to something that was truly valuable. I see the same with Jack, who launched the podcast. Jack had never launched a podcast before. Jack had never, he'd done freelance gigs, but he'd never launched what is now like one of the biggest podcasts in the world. And as a result of that, they had to create something from first principles that was video first, that focused on guests that Steve was truly curious about, that was really well distributed, very well crafted, because they had no prerequisite for this is how a podcast is made. They said, this is what we believe it is from first principles. And as a result of being naive, they created something fantastic. So if anyone is dealing with imposter syndrome, because I know so many people do, if anyone is saying to themselves that I'm not sure this is where I'm supposed to be, in fact, I don't think I'm good enough, what would I say? What would I say to myself? I think I would say understand that your naivety is your strength, and understand that being the least experienced person in the room is the exact room you need to be in. And you should probably stop asking yourself whether you can do it, and just trust that you have the strength to figure it out either way.
I think what you said very powerful is that people usually think that they're in the wrong room while they're in the right room. As soon as you realize that, you can change the mentality and then be confident, because if you're there, it's because someone thought and trusted you and saw your potential in it. So if you're somewhere, it's because someone believed in you. So if someone believed in you, you believe in yourself.
I think there's nuance though, because I don't think it's as simple as saying to yourself, when I look at what changed across those 6 months, it's not as simple as I sat myself down and said, okay, I am now confident. I really asked myself, what changed for me to start saying I'm not meant to be in these rooms, to looking at these rooms around me and being like, oh my God, he's so exceptional. He's so exceptional. I feel so insignificant. Perfect. I'm exactly where I need to be. What changed is that I think you start to collect evidence that you can do the things you think you can do. So you spend 6 months in a job, you start to see yourself progressing, you progress past a year, and this feeling really lasted like a year. And even now I still have it. You still feel like an imposter. But you start to collect evidence, and I think evidence becomes your belief, and your belief leads to your actions. So it's not really a case of I suddenly feel confident. It's that I took the chance to keep momentum, keep moving forward, and as a result gained evidence, and that evidence becomes your belief.
And you believe, your evidence gives you everything,
I think so, yeah.
So what's the actual purpose with Behind the Diary? Because you see it as a channel, but as we said before, it's like probably the most useful tool on the internet for people who are both running a business and also creating content, right? And it's never been done before at that stage. How would you describe Behind the Diary?
Behind the Diary serves to be the blueprint for ambition for the next generation of entrepreneurs. And we believe that there is value in documenting the undeniably human, and documenting the struggles, the strifes, and the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur and striving towards an ambitious goal. We exist so that the next generation of entrepreneurs understand what it takes, what they need, and what it looks like when they get there. And another side that we always say is like, we want to be the channel that Steve wishes he had when he was 18 years old. We always think through that lens of like, what did 18-year-old Steve Bartlett need when he was starting out as an entrepreneur? So we channel everything we do through that. Now, what does that look like? It looks like a YouTube channel that follows Steven Bartlett as an entrepreneur around the world. We have kind of dabbled in a few different formats where we've done very raw behind the scenes vlogs, and then we've also done viral, highly produced videos that we know work on YouTube. And we're at this interesting point now where we can go highly produced, or we can go really raw and very laid back. And we're kind of landing somewhere in the middle where we want to have a cadence that publishes twice a week. And on Sunday, we drop very raw, inescapably human content of Steve as an entrepreneur, where we're a glass house. People can look into his world. They can see what's happening. And then we also on Wednesdays want to do the production quality videos, the ones that have one theme, that take you on a journey, that maybe incorporate other creators, because then we know we're serving two separate pillars of the creator economy. We know that AI content is making people draw to the human experiences, so we're focusing on human experiences on a Sunday. We know that we want to bring a top of the funnel and attract tons of people into the channel, so we're doing these highly produced videos that we know how to engineer for views. So that's what we are. And who we're for is really 5 personas that we've developed. Something that really revolutionized our process early on is picking 5 personas that we believe watch the channel and tailoring everything we do for them. So our personas are 5 entrepreneurs at various stages based on real people that we know watch the channel. So you've got the CEO of an 8-9-figure business who watches the channel and feeds back to us. You've got the sofapreneur who hasn't started her business but really, really wants to, and she's watching all the podcasts and all the self-help books, and she doesn't really know what to do. And then somewhere in the middle, you've got the $100 million founder and the £10,000 a month founder. We look at these personas, and every single decision we make, we say, does it serve Jenny? Does it serve Dave? Does it serve Georgia? All these people. And it really roots us back to this core thesis of providing value for entrepreneurs.
We watch the outcome, right? We watch the video, but behind that, there must be a a mentally amount of experiments, and I've seen you in one of the episodes drawing on your office window, planning an episode. What happens before posting any episodes?
Yeah, you're right. The video that you see on YouTube is the tip of the iceberg. And it's funny, I don't think anyone can really understand all the work that goes in from the incredible team to get that video live. But how do we make a video? I mean, it's an immensely complex process, but I split it down into really 3 stages. The first is production, the second is post-production, and then the third is published production. So let's start with production. How do we actually shoot a video? We really do film 7 days a week, always on content with Steve. So we are traveling the world with Steve. For the first 2 years, when it was just me, I think we did 54 flights in 54 weeks. And we are all over the place. We're always filming. You're editing on the move, documenting every single moment. And we do this for a few reasons. Pete Souza was Barack Obama's White House photographer for 8 years, took over 8 million photographs with Barack Obama. And he has this quote that I really, really love. And he says that you never know when history is going to unfold. He spent every single moment with Barack Obama. And some of his best images came from the least planned moments. And I've seen that firsthand working with Steve, where it's actually the small nuanced pieces that happen in the back of a taxi at 4 a.m, where someone's really tired, but they have a fantastic conversation with the taxi driver that you just always want to be ready for. So we apply the same principle, where we never know when history is going to unfold, and therefore we're always on. We believe that proximity is the key to a really good story. And I think it's just become this symbiotic relationship with working with Steve, where we work in tandem. So invasive means you're always there, you're always ready, but invisible means you're just part of the wallpaper. You're not getting in the way, you often operate in silence, you don't interject, but you're just always ready to document what's in front of you. So that's the production side of things. We're always rolling. The post-production side of our process really follows a principle of marginal gains, where we are so obsessed around making things 1% better every single time in the edit. And we do this for a few reasons. We do it because we understand that these things compound slowly over time. So if we just focus on making our animations slightly better this week, or we focus on color grading slightly better this week, or maybe we build our story in a slightly different way that might improve our retention, we know that these small gains over time compound and compound and compound to the point where you're suddenly saying, this video just did 1 million views. What does that mean? Well, actually, it's the fact that Alex on a Friday evening decided to spend 3 more hours sound designing this clip to make it really, really exceptional. That's really one of the principles for post-production that has led us into our I'd say moderate success so far, because I feel like we're at 20% potential. And then in terms of publish production, this is the last stage, which is what do you do when a video goes live? Here it's like a game of removing the guesswork. It's actually not about making a beautiful video. It's not about the storyline being fantastic. It's about understanding that you're working with an algorithm here. And if the algorithm has no idea what your video is and how it's packaged, it's going to have no idea who to show it to. So we could spend 16 hours making this podcast beautiful. The very best questions, the very best responses. It's perfect in terms of direction. It's perfect in terms of editing. But if you publish it on a platform and the platform has no idea what to do with it, then no one's going to see it. It's like having a fantastic shop and a dirty shop window. So for us, it means that when we publish, we are super principled about removing the guesswork. So everything we do in terms of titles, in terms of testing, in terms of editing decision is rigorously tested so that when we publish our piece of content, we know it's going to perform to the best of its ability.
You said many things.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
It's great. You said many interesting things. I'd like to start by, you said you follow Win 24/7. You're actually filming Steve 24/7. How do you get to do that without interrupting the momentum that someone may have at 4 a.m. in a taxi having the conversation, or just the inspirational spark that happens and you're just there and happens in between two people and you're there, you need to film, but you cannot interrupt at all. Like, how do you do that?
I think you do it badly at first. It's really difficult to do that. So you start by accepting, I'm going to get this really wrong at first. And the first 6 months to a year of working with Steve, I got it so wrong. And there's still times you slip up today, but I think accepting from the very start of this is going to be a really intense period of learning and figuring it out as we go, that eventually it's going to become seamless. But you accept it's really painful at the start. Steve actually, and I speak about this often, at the start he said something to me which I really, really loved. He said, hey, these first 6 months are going to be really tough. We're going to get tons of things wrong, and that's okay. I'm going to give you tons of feedback. We just keep moving. And it almost like lifted this weight off my shoulders. You can imagine. Because suddenly you're like, oh, okay. And the feedback is quick, and the feedback just means you just iterate. And I remember one day I said to him, we were in the car in LA, and I was sat next to him, and I said, hey, can I ask you a question? I said, can you promise me that if you ever don't want me filming, you will just tell me? And he was like, yeah, of course. And it's basically meant that we operate just symbiotically in tandem. So I'm not guessing whether he wants me filming. I know he expects me filming, and if he doesn't want me, he's just going to tell me. And if we get something wrong, he's going to tell me, we iterate, we go again. And I think, I mean, it's credit to Steve to have a leader like that who can give you such constant, useful, like iterative feedback, and also have the belief in you to change it and get better. That has just meant that we've almost, I don't even think like, how do we always stay filming? It seems to happen now.
Yeah, it's a real good question that you ask at the time. Like, if you ever want me not filming, would you tell me? Because that, as you said, that lifts up some weight of your shoulders, and you know that he expects you to be there and to film that, and that you're not annoying, or I don't know the words, but yeah.
Also, my job is to be annoying.
Yeah.
My job is to always be there. And I say this to my team all the time, and Steve says it to me, like, your job is to be annoying. Your job is to be in this room filming. Your job is to make sure that someone has good audio. And I think that is the difference between really good behind the scenes content and behind the scenes content that's just planned. Like, good behind the scenes content is inconvenient. Good behind the scenes content is uncomfortable. So when you're sat in a meeting and it's actually quite like an emotional subject, it's very easy for someone with their human instincts to say, oh, maybe not. But because we have this trust with the team and with Steve, that we just know, hey, if we don't want this filmed, you will just tell us, then it creates fantastic work. Yeah. So I think having trust with your subject is super, super important. And it's taken 3 years to get to that stage where we truly believe, like, we operate with eye signals and hand signals, because there's so much that we film that we've kind of developed over time.
I actually read a post that you published after the Jimmy Fallon's interview, where you spoke about how taking the picture without interrupting the momentum and the vibe, and that got me thinking for a long time. I was like, this is one of the like highest top moments in like career-wise, and very important because everything that involves, and you're there and you have to be smooth taking the picture, filming without being there.
Without being in the way.
Yeah.
How can you do that?
I think you said like building a confidence, right? Building that confidence is great.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I've really learned can kill your creativity as a photographer, but I think this also applies to any creative field. And the first is making assumptions about your subject. So one of the poisons of working with someone so closely for 3 years is that you start to assume things about them. You start to say, okay, well, in this moment, Steve's probably feeling this because we've been in these kind of events so many times, but he's probably actually just on his phone doing some work. And actually, you don't observe the person for what they're truly doing in that moment. I think one of the things I always ask myself to do when I come into a room, when I'm in an environment, is say, what are they doing? Who is this person? What are they feeling? Where are they? What's the context that might have happened in their day? And you just observe them for who they are in that moment, not for what you know about them. But then it means you pick up on micro signals. You pick up on the fact that actually he's kind of bouncing his left leg here. Is there a chance he's nervous? Or actually his partner's got her hand resting on her shoulder there. And small things like that get missed when you assume that you know somebody. So I think
that's a big one, yeah.
The really difficult skill to master is to just not assume that you understand your subjects and to see them for who they truly are in front of you.
What leads you to being alert all the time? Stay alert, right?
Oh, it's a great question. You ask very good questions.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm gonna figure out this answer as I tell it to you, but
cool.
I think it comes from a place of when you grow up as a creative in an academic household, you can often feel that your skill set alone isn't enough. So as a result, in the start of my career, I really tried to master people. I really tried to understand reading people, making people feel comfortable. How do you get a bride and groom as a 16-year-old to feel comfortable on your wedding day when actually they wonder why the hell they've just paid £1,000 to you and whether you're going to ruin their wedding. So I spent like a lot of the first 5 to 10 years of my even early career now just trying to be a people person. And I think as a result of that, it's meant that I am obsessed with understanding and reading people, and not in a way of like asking questions or really probing into them, but as a creative, just observing. I think the skill is observation. The skill is observation and listening and documenting, because as a result, you can start to really see small details in people. There's a real privilege to working for someone for such a long time, because you build a lot of trust and a lot of context around each other. But at the same time, you have to have this naivety and not assume about them. So I think for me, it comes from a place of knowing or feeling when I was younger that my skill set wasn't enough. And as a result, having to really focus on making people feel comfortable, making myself feel invisible. I don't know how I do that.
You know, you link it to a lack of skill that you thought you had. And what I see is that it takes a lot, and it says a lot from a person who wants to read the other person. It says a lot from that person. The way you get what I want to say.
I do.
Like, not everyone cares about how it's like being empathetic and being alert and towards how you could perform the best. So you create that good connection and environment with a person, if you know what I mean.
I do. And it makes me think of something I've learned recently, that I think a lot of creatives focus on their skills, and it's just not that simple. So have you heard of the myth that the daddy long legs, the small creature that ends up in households, it's like a spider. The daddy long legs has the most poisonous venom in the world, but no fangs to deliver it. So it's a biological myth, but I think it's really good advice for creatives, because so often as a creative, you can focus on your venom, which is like your technical skills, your ability with a camera, whether you have the best cameras or the best podcast microphone, but you don't have the fangs to deliver it, which is your empathy, your way to connect with humans. Actually, do you walk into a room and make someone feel comfortable? Do you make them feel seen? Do you make them feel really confident? Do you make them walk into the room and be like, oh, actually, yeah, I can do this? I think that your EQ, your ability to connect with humans, is your fangs, and your technical ability as a creative is your venom. And without both, I think you're poison to work with.
That's a brilliant example, yeah. And nowadays, everyone, as you said, focus on their skill, because it's what's not easy, but available for everyone, right? With the amount of information that we have. And very few focus on the human side of it and how to take it to the next level. Yeah. And that thing that you said, like, it's great to have Steve, a great leader who is great on feedback, and to be able to talk to him so transparently and everything. And that is actually the same. Like, he's worked on these like social human values really at the same time, at the skill set that he's developing as well.
100%. And you'll know this, like you work with people, and your job is to make people feel heard and get the best out of them. And how do you make someone who's really nervous feel comfortable and feel seen? So I think that is the skill that not a lot of people focus on. And how do you focus on it? How do you become better with people? I think it's a case of putting yourself in really uncomfortable environments and gaining evidence of repetitions as to how does that person respond when this happens, and how do I make them feel more interested? I'd recommend a book by, actually,
there you go.
It's actually this book here, which is Greg Williams. He's an exceptional photographer.
Okay.
And one of the reasons Greg Williams has taken like some of the most incredible photographs in the world. He does the Oscars, he does Hollywood sets. He's like an A-list celebrity photographer. But there's something about his images that feels innately candid. It's almost as though he has captured them just before he's asked them to pose. And it's because he focuses as a photographer on having this exceptional connection with his subjects. So whenever you see him shooting, he's got one eye under his camera and the other eye is just talking to them. He's just speaking to them as he's photographing, because he understands that what's going to get the best out of his subject isn't the skills. It's his EQ. It's his making them feel seen. So I take a lot of inspiration from his work when I work with Steve, and any of the photography that I do is of like, how do I make this person feel comfortable, feel seen? And actually more often than not, it's about being silent and just observing and being in the background and letting people get comfortable with you being there. So whenever I walk into a room, I've got a camera. Whenever I always have a camera on me. It's just become a part that people expect me to have a camera and photograph, so that when I pull up to take a photograph, they don't even think about it. But I love his work. Anyone who's watching this,
we'll have a look. We'll have a look.
Greg Williams' work, because it's exceptional.
How does your life look at the moment, Will? Because we're speaking about many situations that require like a lot of traveling, a lot of work, and the outcome that is what we get to see is brilliant. Is like the best in the world, and I want to do the behind the scenes of the behind the scenes. You know,
it's getting meta.
I like to do the behind the scenes of what actually happens. So, what is happening in your life at the moment? Like, how has your last month been? How's your daily life look like?
I think it's credit. It's probably good context for the audience that Alex has been chasing me for the last month and a half to make this happen. And I'm really grateful for your consistency, because the last month and a half has been tons of travel with work. I think we went from LA to New York to Miami to Vegas to New York to LA to London. So it's been in that. It means that when I'm away, it's super, super busy. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Like I genuinely sometimes pinch myself and say, wait, you do genuinely have the best job in the world. And it's really easy to forget that in that busyness, you are living out a dream that you once had. That if you told 16-year-old Will that, hey, you're not only just going to have a camera in your hands every day, but you're going to be seeing parts of the world that you never would have seen. You're going to be traveling with people you consider friends, but get to call colleagues. It feels very, very unique. But my day-to-day is actually shifting from what it was the first 2 years. The first 2 years was like travel. I'd work, I'd shoot from the morning to the evening, and then I'd edit in the evening and build the vlogs, and we'd go again. And it was honestly like that for 2 years. It was the most immense, incredible experience. But now we're in this privileged position where we're actually bringing a team in. And it's no longer like, how fast can I run? How much can I travel? How much can I edit? It's actually like, how good can I be at bringing other exceptional creatives who are better than me and getting them on the mission, inspired to do the right things. And it's given me like this complete lease of life as a creative, because it's no longer a solo operation. And it means that the potential for what we're creating has just like exploded by 10x. So now my life looks a lot more like working with my team, the Behind the Diary team, the exceptional talent like Alex Felstead, Andrew, Elise Brown. It's currently about 6 of us, Jackson Holloway. Like there's tons of people in our team who are exceptional, and getting the best out of them on the mission towards growing the channel. So I spend my time some months traveling in the US, filming lots and lots and lots. And actually now I'm in a month where I'm more so editing, managing the team and building that side of things. So,
and all of this in 3 years. Yeah?
I know, it's crazy, man. It's truly crazy. I think it's probably a point of nuance that we're very privileged that Steve, as a creative and entrepreneur, sees the value in these projects before they've taken off. So let me explain what I mean by that. Like it's very difficult to launch a channel like this, and it takes a lot of time, and it's slow and it's slow and it's slow, and then it starts to become fast. But one of the things that Steve is really exceptional at is like investing before it takes off and trusting the first principles that people are going to want more human content and people are going to want behind the scenes content as well. He really believes in the mission. And as a result, it's meant that we can now start to scale and invest into Behind the Diary and take it to the moon. So it doesn't go past me that that's probably quite a unique position. But the principle I think there is that if you understand the first principles of what you're creating and you believe that it can be slow first and then compound, then you should just double down and go all in on it. To the point where Steve said, he's like, hey, whatever you need team-wise, go get it. Like, I just don't have enough time to hire quickly. And I'm now like restructuring my days to make sure that the biggest upstream thing, which is the exceptional people I can bring in, is what I focus on.
I can imagine your life in 3 years' time. Do you ever ask yourself the question that you used to, like, what's next or not anymore?
So I've actually given up on 3-year plans, because I look back at my life and none of my plans, none of the things I've written in the back of diaries have ever been right. I've always in some way exceeded or completely missed my expectations for what I thought my life would look like. So I can't really trust that in 3 years' time, if I say, hey, Lamborghini, Miami, Porsche, millionaire, it's going to happen. That's not my goals by any means, but that's kind of what we're advertised today. I actually thought about this more recently when a 20-year-old messaged me on Substack and he said, hey, Will, I've just got this incredible opportunity for a job. I've dropped out of my apprenticeship. I'm now working in London for an entrepreneur and I don't know whether I should stay. It's really difficult. The hours are tough and I don't know whether this aligns to my next 5 years. Like, what do I do? And I imagine so many of us have found ourselves in this position where we're like, oh my God, what am I going to do in the next 3 years? What do I do now? I think the first thing people need to do is answer 3 W's, which is, what do you want? What if it works? And then what do I need to do next? So what do you want is explaining to yourself, what do you want from this situation? For me, that is like, I want a sense of challenge. I want to feel out my depth. I want to be building something and have autonomy over the work I'm creating. I want to work with really great people. And I want to feel a sense of progress in the work I'm creating and challenge. Okay, so that's what I want. I should then ask myself in this situation, what if it works? Okay, well, if what I'm building works, I'm going to get all of these things, increasingly so. We have a chance to build probably one of the biggest behind the scenes channels on YouTube. That's a really exciting one for me. And then the question is like, what do I do next? Well, I just need to make sure we're focusing on building the team and scaling the production as much as we can. So for me, that like removes this ambiguity on like, what do I do next? What's the next thing in 3 years? Like, I'm not thinking about 3 years. I'm thinking from first principles about like, as long as I feel these things, that's fantastic. And a point of nuance here is that you can never have all 3 at the same time. So what do I mean by that? You might understand what you want and you might understand what would happen if it works, the outcome, and you might understand what you need to do next, but you're never going to have all at the same time. Mm-hmm. So for example, you might be really clear that you love podcasting, and if it takes off, my God, you're going to be a millionaire. But the work is going to feel really, really difficult. Yeah. Or the work can be going really, really well.
Although a millionaire is not even in the books, but yeah.
Well, you never know. Or the podcast might be going really well. You're back to back with recordings, and you're very clear on what you're doing, but you're not really sure why. So I think as a creative, as someone who's striving, like understand what you want, what if it works, and what you need to do next, but accept that these things are always fluid, and not all of them are going to be certain at the same time. There's always going to be doubts. That's fine. But you just need to keep moving.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Like, you have into account all of these 3 questions, but you're not going to find the answers at the same time. I've always thought about, it's very powerful to sit down and think, what do you want and what do you need to get done? I think that's mental. Like, the moment you realize that you can actually make it happen, you get to think, what do I need to do next, right? But I never thought, like, what if it works? And I think it's a massive point. What if it works? Because if sometimes we get involved into doing many, many, many things, and it could be that when we get the outcome, we feel that, like, okay, like, what now? It's worked. Everything that I've done is worked. Yeah, but I've given up on family or on relationships. And that was very important to me at the time. Maybe not, but maybe something else, Like, I think it's a very interesting question to ask. What if it works? And we don't normally do it.
And I think the key with that question is to pick something that you would fail for in whatever you're driving towards. Because what if it works implies that what if it doesn't? Like, what if it doesn't? There's a chance that it doesn't. And I think the goal with these kind of ambitions, if you're someone who's striving, is to say, I would pick this even if it didn't work, because it brings it back to like the process. So for me, like, if Behind the Diary doesn't work, I'm so satisfied because it's going to work. But if Behind the Diary doesn't work, I'm satisfied because the day-to-day of learning, building this team, understanding, being at my depth, like, that is the podium for me. So I've picked something that I would fail for again and again and again. And if it works, fantastic. But both opportunities lead to a good outcome for me. And I learned this when we hit 100,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. and I felt nothing. And we hit 100K, and it was just me at the time. And I was like, oh my God, like I've got the shiny YouTube plaque. Like I used to dream about this. This was crazy. And I kind of sat there watching it tick over, and I was like, so what? And I realized at that point that it's not about the outcome, but at the same time, I would still do this if the outcome didn't come. So really, it's like shifting your mindset to be like, it's not about, yes, it's about if this works, but actually it's about whether you'd still do this if it fails as well.
You discovered something without an end goal that, as we spoke before, it keeps you going every day.
Like you said, an insurmountable goal. I guess that's it, because for me, as long as it's ticking those first principles, fantastic. Like there's no end goal to feeling out your depth. There's no end goal to feeling like you're working with great people. So maybe that's the whole point. I'm still figuring it out, but for me, that's what's kind of kept me on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. You must have had so many situations where you learned many things or knew different perspectives that you heard or listened or saw or simply observed that no one told you, but you got to you. If I ask you in these 3 years, what is something that you've implemented in your life by observing the universe that you're in? I mean, I can imagine there's many, but maybe subconsciously one.
I think one of the most important things I've learned over the last 3 years of working with Steve and with Flight Story is that your success is really determined not by how good you are, but how good you are at bringing the right people in around you. There's that amazing quote of like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And for me, seeing the culture that they have of bringing in exceptional people, collecting the right people on the mission, has just changed the way that I think as a creative. Because I used to think if I was the most technical, if I was the most skilled and the best with people, it would mean that we'd be successful. But actually, like, I've shedded this skin of believing that it's about any one person. And I've learned that the most exceptional teams, the most successful companies, the most successful YouTube channels really just understand that it's about the people you collect, getting the best out of them, aligning them on a mission, and giving them the tools they need to do that day in, day out. So for me, the most important skill I've learned is honestly hiring and bringing in people. And I'm still learning this day to day. Like, I think it's a skin you shed, but man, I look at where we are now and I look at where we were 2 years ago. And really, it's down to the exceptional people that we've brought in. It's down to Alex. It's down to Andrew. It's down to Jackson. It's down to Elise that have joined the team. You know, there's going to be 10 of us by the end of the year. So for me, it's like the exponential graph just starts to compound. And I see my job now not as like being the most ruthless, exceptional editor, but making sure that these people who we bring in are exceptional, building a culture around all of them and making sure they have what they need. And it's something I'm learning as, you know, as I step into this kind of different age, because
it's like the more talent you have together, the better the outcome will be, right?
Yeah. And I think if you're a freelancer or you're a creative, like you're so tunnel vision on your ability, your skills, that actually it's a very narrow-minded outcome that you'll get. But it's something that Steve has definitely taught me of, like, it's about the people you bring in. Steve is honestly just a fantastic collector of people. He'll say this himself. He's very good at like very specific things, which he understands, but he just fully understands this principle that it takes a village, to put it simply. And I'm learning that I'm really enjoying learning that.
That's interesting, very interesting. For those creators that may wish to be on your team one day, for example, or those ones who are at home and they've started, but they don't know the direction, they don't know the situations they're going to live in the future. They may have some questions about what to focus on now, because we live in a world with a lot of information and people telling you exactly what to do. And I would love to hear from you, your perspective on some of the things that we could talk about and they could take from it. If a content creator is thinking a lot about his mission and everything, what should be his priority today as a content creator?
Okay. If you don't focus on execution, it will kill your creativity. And what I mean by that is that if you're not sure what to do, do something. The most important thing you can do in the early stages of your career, in the early stages of your creativity, is create. Like execute. I'm so passionate about this. I've seen this in actually in my mum. My mum's an exceptional photographer, and she started. She switched out of teaching, retired, and she picked up photography. And I saw the fastest rate of development in her photography when she was just shooting every single day. Like if you really are not sure what to do, ask yourself how often you're doing it. How often are you doing the thing? How often are you picking up a camera? How often are you writing? And if it's not every single day, then that's what you're doing wrong. It's not that you're not sure what to do, it's that you're not doing.
That's brilliant, yeah. Because that applies to everything in life. Imagine you want to learn guitar, right? And you say, no, I'm learning guitar. But you kind of think and you're like, I haven't progressed that much, but I'm learning guitar. And the reality is that in 3 months, you've picked the guitar 5 times over the 3 months. But subconsciously, you think, I'm playing the guitar. I'm learning how to play the guitar. Well, you've picked it up 5 times. You know, like you need to execute, you need to take action. I think that's massive, yeah.
That is my biggest piece of advice. Like young creatives, just execute.
And nowadays, how can you create community? Because I think one of the goals when creating content is because you believe, or I want to think that, because people believe in their mission and they think that their message can get to other people who may think the way they feel, right? How do I get to these people and to create a community where we can all grow?
I would say be unapologetic about who you are and what you love, and then put yourself in rooms that you're not supposed to be in and talk to people. And that sounds very simple, but I reflect on my own experience. And I think that's what I've done. I think this is maybe more so for people at the start of their career, but often it can feel like you need to apologize for being different, or you need to give context as to why you're in this room holding this camera. I think you need to scrap that. You need to be unapologetic about your belief. You need to say, I am a podcaster and I am here because I like speaking to people and this is my story. Remove any explanation of why you do what you do, and then put yourself in rooms where you can meet like-minded people and speak to them. So for me, that looked like at these wedding conventions, going and speaking to wedding photographers and saying to them, yes, I'm a 16-year-old wedding photographer. At university, going and in these societies and speaking to other creatives and being unapologetic about my passion, my creativity, my drive.
With that transparency.
Yeah, of course, because otherwise, why put one foot in, one foot out? You know, like, which one are you going to be? I don't know. I have so much admiration for people like yourself who are unapologetically passionate about something. You're seeing this now, like a resurgence in passion, where it's actually cool now to be passionate. The Timothy Chalamets, the Marty Supremes, like the people who are like, yes, this is who I am. Like, come and see it. I think if you want to build a community first, if you want to know what communities to join, you need to be very clear on who you are and how you present to the world. So, you know, why doubt yourself? Why not just say, this is who I am? And often what you find is that when you put yourself out there, you become a magnet and people come towards you. So that's my advice.
Yeah, one thing I find interesting is that since I started the podcast, I was very fortunate to speak to some of the Spanish best speakers, in the country, and I got questions from friends, family, close ones, like, how is that person? Like, how is he or how is she? And I was like, is the same way you see that person on the media, on the socials? That's the same way. Like, we tend to believe that the person we see through the screen, it's not the real person, and that's what we misunderstand. That's why we're watching them there through the screen, because they are themselves, all transparency, showing themselves to the world. And
absolutely.
Of course, if you pretend to be someone, sooner or later, that's going to get you. Like, it's got to be, that's linking that to, you need to be clear on your values and who you are, to then project that somewhere else and be 100% sure that that's you, and it's not someone that doesn't match your values.
100%. Yeah, you're spot on with that. You're spot on. I really agree.
Appreciate it. Another one, a big one, is like YouTube is all over the place now, right? It's everyone is dreaming about getting a YouTube channel and growing it. What would you say for those ones starting a YouTube channel?
Ooh.
I know it can be like a 2 hours conversation, but just to touch base on
of
some
course,
of the important
I
ones.
could speak for hours on this, but I think maybe if you're at the stage where you're wondering about starting a YouTube channel, start is definitely the first thing. Like, don't spend too much time in that decision making phase. And then the more important thing is, when you're wondering, don't wonder what you should make, but try and reason from first principles about the content you make. So the big mistake I see a lot of people make on YouTube is that they make something inherently selfish. So this is my walk along the park talking about my dog. And there's a balance to this, but often we find that we think about ourselves when we create our content. But one of the first principles I think about is this broad appeal? Does this have an audience? Is this specific? And is it emotional in some way? So that's where I reason from making anything, from writing a Substack article to a carousel to when I think about the behind the diary edits. I'm always thinking through that lens, because I think the really difficult thing to do as a creative is to see your work through someone else's eyes. And often work falls flat on YouTube because it's just very selfish. And it's actually really difficult for an algorithm to show a video that's like walking my dog through the park and talking about my career. Is very difficult. It has no idea who to show that to. Whereas actually a video that's like, I'm 23 and I made $10,000 a month, so I quit my job with these 3 simple steps. Then suddenly the algorithm starts to say, oh, actually, I know this person over here is thinking about that as well. We'll show it to them. And it's the same experience for the viewer. If they click on your video and they have no idea what this topic is, and they have no idea why it helps their life, because we're all inherently selfish, then, yeah.
You spot on the difficulty that some people may have in watching their content through someone else's eyes, because we always think that our idea is the best idea in the world and it's got to succeed because it can't be wrong. If I feel the passion, I feel that that's the gap there that I want to feel, it will be good. But if you make the effort and try to see that idea from someone else's eyes, that I think that's a great thing to do. Yeah,
it's so hard to do as well. It's really hard to truly understand what that looks like. One of the frameworks that we use, that Steve kind of taught us at work, is this idea that, imagine Jenny sees your piece of content, ad, video, story, music, whatever it might be. Imagine she sees it. She's just broken down on the side of the road. It's raining. She's late for her job. She's got no time. She's kind of angry. But for some reason, your ad or your video pops up. What would you have to say in those 60 seconds that she's going to give you for her to care? What context do you have to give her? How do you have to speak to her so that she would watch? And we think about that through everything we do, because I think content creators can end up being quite selfish in the content they make, and really great broad appeal content starts from being selfless.
And even without realizing it.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, that's very powerful what you said. And then if we dig in a little bit into, like, you start a YouTube channel, you're developing your content, and you've got all of those things that you need to kind of learn from scratch. Like, there's the marketing, there's the value to your mission, there's the storytelling, there's the editing. Is there any that I should focus on the most, or should I bring them all up together and go with it?
I would go back to focusing on execution. Focus on execution, and all polls will rise at the same time, because the more repetitions you're doing, the more you are going to learn on every single one of those fields. But to be more specific there, I'll touch on maybe a few storytelling principles as a podcast to yourself, and maybe for editors out there that I think have really changed the way I think about storytelling. And the first is that I think often when people tell stories, they think of themselves as storytellers. So whether you're pitching in a presentation, or you're telling your girlfriend that you might need to actually move house together, or you're editing, or you're speaking to 1,000 people, everyone there is telling a story. But I actually think you're not a storyteller. You should think of yourself as a story seller when you tell stories. Let me explain what I mean. Think of a real estate agent. A real estate agent would never walk you into a house and say, front door, well, then we'll go to the bathroom. And actually, this is the bedroom, and here's the kitchen, that's the garden. All right, thank you so much. Do you want to buy it? Of course they wouldn't. They would sell you this story so that as you're walking through the driveway, they'd say that, hey, this oak tree on the left here is actually 4,000 years old. And I know that your father's a carpenter. Like, he's going to be obsessed with this kind of oak tree. And he walks you through to the kitchen. And in the kitchen, he's going to move you really quickly, show you all the appliances, and then he's going to drop you into the cinema room and just be quiet. And he's going to say, look how quiet it is in here. And he's going to take you on this emotional journey all the way throughout the house. And people need to do this when they tell stories. They need to sell you their story. So often it becomes A to B. I went to the shops, and at the shops I got an orange. But if you sell someone a story, you start thinking differently. You start saying, how do I take them on this journey? Do I actually relate it to them in this way and then bring them all the way down here and then up here and then sell it to them at the end? So the first principle I always think about when creating really great stories and telling really great stories is that I'm not telling them. I'm trying to sell you on that. So if I'm telling you the orange story, I'm actually saying, I'm starting with a story. I'm trying to sell it to you and be like, my God, I saw this advert that if you don't have vitamin C and you're deficient in vitamin C, you can actually be sleeping 3 hours less a night, just for lack of a better example. So I put my shoes on, my brand new shoes, and I went outside and it was super, super sunny. And I was like, oh, the sun's hitting me. I'm getting vitamin C. But maybe I want a little bit more. So I ran to the shops. And when I got to the shops, I saw this incredible person who was in super good shape, and it made me want to buy an orange. So I got an orange. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're taking them on this journey. And instead of A to B.
And people, as you did that, I was thinking, I can come up with many questions. Like, where do you see the adverts? Like, what do you do next? Who do you talk to? And that's like playing with the algorithm, like content-wise, you know?
100%.
So
100%. So I think one of the things you can focus on is like this principle of being a storyteller, not a story.
And it can be planned, right?
Yeah,
like
100%.
there's room for improvement, because some people may see you talking, may see Steve talking, may see some big idols they have talking and say, I'm never going to speak at the confident level that they speak to, or I'm never going to be able to tell that story because it's so natural and he is born with it and all of this. But the truth is that they've been, and you guys been executing more than the rest of the people, so you got better along the way, and you've improved your plans, your words and everything. Like, you need to give it a think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know we touched base on the imposter syndrome before, but what could you tell him? Like, is there any message that we could give?
I'm super passionate about this because I've always been the least experienced person in the room. So from being 14 and watching my sisters graduate at Oxford and Harvard, whilst I was there holding a camera, trying to figure out what the buttons do, to being 16 years old and turning up as a wedding photographer and having the groom ask me, when does the photographer arrive, to being at university and dropping out and suddenly working in a room of some of the most exceptional people with Steven Bartlett. I've always been the least experienced person in the room, so I understand that feeling. But I've learned that incompetence is often a massive sign of opportunity. And I think when you're in a room where you don't really belong, it's when you're forced to innovate. And as soon as you become naive, as soon as you become someone who doesn't have all the tools, you're forced to do something different. You're forced to reason from first principles and create something truly, truly original. I saw this firsthand with Jack Sylvester and Steven, who built the Diary of a CEO, where Jack had never really built a podcast before. They'd never really done this before, but because they reasoned from first principles and they were naive, they were forced to innovate. NASA did this really fascinating study where they tested 5-year-olds on a creative genius index. So they tested thousands of 5-year-olds against their creativity, and they found that 98% of them scored as a creative genius level. Wow. They tested them 5 years later, it drops a bit. 5 years later, it drops a bit. 5 years later, it drops a bit. And then you get to adulthood and you see that only 2% of adults score at the creative genius level. So why is that happening?
Why is that happening?
Well, it's because when we're young, we are naive and we can put 2 and 2 together and make 3. And often I think that your naivety as a creative is actually the reason you can innovate. So I've stopped asking myself, am I good enough? I've just started saying, am I strong enough to hold on whilst I become good enough in this environment? And I think if you're a creative and if you're feeling this feeling, you just need to default to execution. Execute, execute, execute. Be in the room where you're uncomfortable. Do the reps, create, and execute, because actually you will then realize that it's not about your experience, it's about execution, so you can gain evidence, and evidence becomes your belief.
How powerful that is, yeah? Execution.
Just execute.
Yeah.
You don't execute, it kills your creativity.
One last one, Will. We've been speaking about your daily life at the moment, all that you're focused on, your context before-wise. And I would like to ask you, because you, as you said before, you were doing the degree, but also looking for how you could be like a freelancer and working your way through it. And now with your role that you have at the moment as well, is like 24/7 ready, staying alert and being always looking for the opportunity to perform at best. What are your thoughts on a work-life balance?
This might be controversial, but I don't think there is one. And I don't think there is one, especially in your 20s. I just think for the next 10, 15, 20 years of my life, I am not optimizing for harmony. I'm optimizing for experience. And experience often means that you're going to be working super, super hard. You're going to be working super, super late. But with that, you're also going to be having brand new experiences, working with fantastic people, learning tons. So for me, it's like a contradiction. You can say, okay, well, you have these massive ambitions, but then you also want work-life balance. It doesn't really compute in my head, because I can't sit there and say, damn, I really want this to work. This is going to take so much work, and say, but I feel out of harmony. Of course you do, because that's the cost it's going to take. It's going to take huge amounts of work. I'm in an immensely privileged position in my life where I can work really hard. I don't have a family yet. I don't have massive responsibilities. So why not just pour every single thing I have into becoming like a true master at my craft? And honestly, when you're surrounded by people who think similarly, it's like the most liberating thing in the world, because something to you feels so innate and just like, well, of course I'm going to just be on my laptop and working and try and progress this. When you surround yourself with other people like that, it's amazing.
Not being surrounded by them, by those people, may lead you to be thinking that you're the weird one in between those who want more of a comfort zone or more of a chill evening, while you want the pace and a bit more and a bit more. So when you're surrounded with these people, I can imagine that it's like a relief that, okay, I'm not the only one who asks himself what's next or looks for perfection on this when it should be finished already, you know?
And I think there's a misconception that if you are working really hard, everything else goes out the window. Now, yes, you are going to have to make sacrifices, but I've really valued seeing in successful entrepreneurs like Steve, the fact that they do protect some of their first foundations. So Steve is probably one of the hardest working person I've ever seen. And I don't think people truly understand what that means, but his propensity and capacity for hard work is huge. But even though he's going to work probably twice as many hours as you, he is still going to make sure that in his day, every day is blocked to go to the gym. Every day, 5 to 7 days a week, he's in the gym training. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's a 20-minute session, sometimes it's a 2-hour session. And at the same time, he's going to make sure to see his girlfriend. So I think if you're someone who is really prioritizing work, fine, but also prioritize the things that are going to fuel the engine, that are going to make sure you can keep showing up. So for me, that's working out, that's making sure I'm feeling healthy, that's making sure I have time with my beautiful partner. Like, those are things that give me energy, and they are the fuel for what is probably what a lot of people consider too much work. But for me, it's instinct, it's not effort.
It's following your principles, right?
100%. Yeah.
I want to thank you, Will, for this time, for these answers, for these words, for this conversation. I really appreciate that you took the time. I know you've been really busy this last month, and for you to be keen on making this happen is something that I really appreciate. Before we finish, there's 2 questions that I always ask to all the guests that come to the podcast. The first one is, what is the worst advice that you've ever received?
It's not that simple.
That's the advice.
That it's not that simple. When people say to you, it's not that simple, it often is. Like, the biggest mistake you can make is believing that for some reason that's not something you can do. I'm not the kind of person who edits. I'm not the kind of person who would pick up a microphone and podcast. I've seen this firsthand in my life of I learned to roller skate so that I could film Steve running whilst filming. And the first thing that the guy at the shop said to me when I walked in and said, "Hey, I want to buy some roller skates. What do I need?" He said, "It's not that simple." When I dropped out of university to start this job to build a YouTube channel, everyone would say to me, "It's just not that simple. What if you don't get a job after?" All these kind of things. There's going to be so many people in your life and so many circumstances that try and convince you that you are not the type of person who does X, that it's too complicated, it's too nuanced, it takes too much time. It is that simple. You just need to default to executing so you can gain evidence. Start the thing, post the Substack, post the YouTube video, and just gain the evidence over time, and then you will learn. And you'll realize that actually it is quite simple, but it's complicated to do it every single day. It's complicated to compound because it takes a lot of effort to be consistent. I think that was a bit all over the place, but hopefully that makes sense.
It makes sense. I also believe that it is simpler for you because you've given it thought and you've reflected before what do you need to get there, and you're thinking in the future and you're thinking and executing this and that. And when people tell you it's not that simple, it's because they're only focusing on the outcome that you want to learn roller skating. You know that you want to learn, not because you want to learn roller skating, because you want to film Steve while running. So there's no other option than you learning how to roller skate, you know?
Yeah, that's really true.
So when we just see the outcome, it's not simple, but when we see what's behind and the reason why you're doing that, somehow to you becomes simpler. Or not simpler, but it keeps you going. It just needs to happen.
I think you're right. Maybe it's also about applying some kind of pressure to the outcome you want. Like you probably didn't have to do this podcast, but you applied the pressure of, I'm booking a flight to London. So now you have to show up and do it. So I think maybe it's a case of, yes, it's not that simple, but you have to apply pressures and expectations in your life that force you to do the thing. For me,
is a privilege.
Pressure is a privilege. And dropping out of university meant, okay, well, I'm going to have to go figure out this YouTube thing. So yeah, what you said is super interesting.
The second question is, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Ooh. Okay, I have a friend called Barry this is completely unrelated to anything we've spoken on the podcast, so let's see how this goes. I have a friend called Barry who's 80 years old, and we met during lockdown on COVID, and we started going for walks. 80-year-old guy, and we had one rule when we went on walks. We said no limits. No limits to what we could talk about. And what's developed since then is this incredible friendship, and Barry has taught me some exceptional things, and for my 23rd birthday, I asked him to write me a book of 23 pieces of life advice that he would have given to his younger self. And one of the quotes that he gave me in that book really stays with me. And I think it's a principle for how I try and lead my life outside of work, but also just in general. And he says, think deeply, speak gently, love much, laugh often, work hard, give freely, and be kind. That was in the little aphorisms book that he wrote for me. And that's the best advice I've ever been given. I have it saved on my phone as my lock screen, and it's always stayed with me as like a bit of a guide through the good, the bad, the ugly, the exceptional.
The value of that book, huh? Unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Will, for everything you shared with us today.
Thank you.
I think that there's many outcomes that people will take from it, and I really, really appreciate your time. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. You are an exceptional human, and your creativity is contagious. So the passion you put into this podcast, the intentional way you set up and organize the room, the attention to detail, the time you've taken to research, the fact that you've flown to the UK to pursue this passion is truly inspiring. And I know that no doubt you're having a huge impact. So keep executing.
I appreciate your words. I want to say as well, one last thing that I found today. Yeah, I found out that you are an amazing persona. Like you have developed yourself into a level where every single word that you say in the conversation, you think about it, there is a lot of reflection on your outcomes and ideas. So what I see when I see you talking is a person with huge principles, working at something that matches their own values. That's something today hard to achieve. So I just feel that you will smash whatever you think, whatever you want to work towards to. So thank you.
That's very, very kind. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Figuring it out. But as Pete Souza, who, as we mentioned earlier, Barack Obama's photographer, says, I'm proud but never satisfied.
Good. We'll leave it there. And execute.
Execute.